Hello, everyone. This is your host, Mary Jean. I am coming to you from the future in the context of this episode. I'm in post-production, which means I've been editing this podcast for the past 5 hours. I am still in the same room that I recorded it. And I'm realizing that I want to give you a little bit more information on some of the definitions and details of what OCD actually is. And I've put a bunch of effort into the links in the show notes, as well as some information cards that are going to be shown on YouTube. Just some more things to look out for, especially if you are resonating with this episode, if you clicked on it because you perhaps are wondering if your intrusive thoughts are borderline OCD or, you're just hearing my story and resonating with your own mental health journey. I just really want to encourage you to go to the show notes and find the resources that I found that really impacted me and made a difference in my own understanding specifically of OCD. And then I just have some general mental health things on there as well. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode. I am about to release it all to you. I am nervous and scared and excited and just feel really good about how far I've come. So I'm excited to share my story now with all of you. All right. Thanks for listening, everyone. Welcome to the Awakened Anesthetist podcast, the first podcast to highlight the CAA experience. I'm your host, Mary Jean, and I've been a certified anesthesiologist assistant for close to 2 decades. Throughout my journey and struggles, I've searched for guidance that includes my unique perspective as a CAA. At one of my lowest points, I decided to turn my passion for storytelling and my belief that the CAA profession is uniquely able to create a life by design into a podcast. If you are a practicing CAA, current AA student, or someone who hopes to be one, I encourage you to stick around and experience the power of being in a community filled with voices who sound like yours, sharing experiences you never believed possible. I know you will find yourself here at the Awakened Anesthetist podcast. Welcome in. New mic. Hopefully the sound quality is a little bit better. All right, welcome everyone. You are in my meditation nook right now. You're in my podcast space, our guest bedroom. And I just got comfortable and sat down to record a long awaited episode for me, I guess. And if you've been around Awaken Anesthetist podcast for a while, you know that I've been talking about my OCD journey for years. And this is the episode. So we're going to be talking about my diagnosis and journey and healing and lifelong battle, I suppose, with obsessive compulsive disorder. And I really feel called to share today, specifically, out of all of the days that I've been talking about it, because I have been doing a little bit more of my own healing and understanding how sharing my story in uniquely the way that I can share it only is going to reach out and touch someone who needs to hear this today. And it was actually like one person hearing my struggle that completely changed my life, truly. And I'll tell you all those details in this story, but truly it was one person saying, this sounds like OCD. And it just sent me down the most beautiful healing journey that's been so, so hard as well. So I wanted to welcome you all here, whether you're a practicing CAA, you're an AA student, maybe listening to this on your holiday break, if you have one, hopefully. And of course, the aspiring CAAs, the pre-AA community, which I have come to know so much better over the course of really the summer and the fall of 2025. And I just really want this message to go out into the CAA community and reach exactly who it's supposed to. And if that's you, I'm so happy that you found this episode. Let's chat. Okay, I do have some notes that my assistant producer, Adri, actually wrote for me. She also created the little jingle that's at the beginning of this podcast. And I'm really excited to have some help now with the podcast. And so she's going to hopefully keep me on track with some of these questions. So, okay, I've already shared why OCD, why now, why this story. I also wanted to share that, of course, like the disclaimer of I'm not a doctor. I am someone who's been truly diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder. OCD is a spectrum. It has many personalities. It has many sort of symptoms, but the overarching difference between being a little obsessive or, being super excited about something where you can't stop thinking about it, or ruminating, that word where you're like kind of going over and over something, like where that bridges into a diagnosable disorder is when it starts to impede you living your life. So it's not like walking around with excited energy because you're obsessed over this new song or this new person or this new like profession that you found, but it is impacting the life that you want to lead and making it very hard to lead that life. Things like trouble sleeping, or like trouble getting out of the house, or trouble maintaining the relationships that you want to maintain. And that's where it can cross over into truly having an obsessive compulsive disorder. And that is absolutely what I had. I first noticed my symptoms probably when I was maybe, I want to say probably 9 or 10. I very vividly remember I was with my mom and my sister, and we were at the outlet mall, the outdoor shopping centers with all of the doors on the exterior and the sidewalks connecting everything. And we were leaving a store and walking to the parking lot. And I just have this memory of turning around and going back and kind of being separated more from my family because I hadn't stepped over the cracks in the sidewalk correctly. And there was some sort of pattern that I wanted to hit or like touch my toe to certain areas. And I remember vividly, like my my mom kind of walking more towards the car and I was being pulled back. And I just had this almost out of body moment, I think, where I realized I'm being compelled to do something that's pulling me away from my safety. But I felt this desire, like, oh, I have to get this right in order to be able to walk past this part and then catch up to my mom. And yeah, that's my first memory of now what I know was obsessive compulsive disorder. I believe there was a triggering event for me personally. The causes of OCD are not super well defined. It can be multifactorial, but OCD is an anxiety disorder. It's a way that your body learns to cope with anxiety and to try to self-soothe and to help your brain work through the anxiety. And I had a triggering traumatic event when I was 7 that was sort of re-instilled sort of throughout my puberty, prepubescent and then on through probably 8th grade. And I believe that that is what triggered my OCD. From that, it was a sexual trauma. I had a huge healing in 2020-ish, late 2020, personally realizing that I deserve to feel better. And so I went to therapy. I did a therapy called EMDR. It's a type of trauma therapy that reprograms really your subconscious memories and beliefs and thoughts and overwrites them with feelings of safety and love and sort of can reprogram that subconscious. The word I learned was shame. I had a lot of shame after that event. And it was sort of through that healing process in I would say late 2020 and early 2021, that my OCD actually got a lot worse. It sort of felt like the hole inside of me that had been filled with just decades of shame, unaddressed shame, not being able to ever tell anyone, and just feeling like I was a horrible, awful, disgusting person. When that shame actually got healed, it left this, what felt like, well, first I felt amazing. I felt amazing for a long time, probably 4 or 5 months, the best I've ever felt in my life. I just felt so lightened. I felt healed. I felt like I could do anything. It was a really beautiful, magical time in my life. And then about 5, 6 months after I stopped EMDR therapy, it felt like my OCD got really, really loud. Again, I did not know I had OCD at this point, but just these very familiar feelings of ruminating thoughts and worry and dread and being up at night and being like almost shocked with like a horrible thought or image. And then the compulsion is like your brain trying to fix it, trying to find a way out of that horrible thought. And it just got louder and louder and louder. And I realized then that the therapy that I had gone to, the EMDR therapy, didn't fix everything. And the type of OCD that I was struggling with, because there are several different types of OCD, kind of like the themes that your brain latches onto. When I was younger, it was like the get it right, like the just right type of OCD, where, it's sort of the common, like you see it maybe in the news, or like when people are, haha, you're so OCD funny. It's like hand washing, like some cleanliness things, or like flipping on and off a light switch, or numbers counting, or however many strokes you have to stroke your hair when you brush it. Like all of that just right OCD is definitely what I had when I was younger. I'll put maybe on the screen somewhere all the different types of OCD, because that was very helpful to me, because it changed throughout my life, which I think is one of the reasons why I didn't realize this was a disease. I just thought this was like some new awful thing that I had to stress over. But when I was maybe 11 through 14, I had what's called religiosity OCD, where I thought I was going to hell, and just really, really hurt me, like really changed the way I was living my life, because I was so obsessed with the worry that I was going to hell. Also during that time, I had sexuality OCD, which is when you constantly question your sexuality. Mind you, I had no no real understanding of sexuality. I was very sheltered. I had no one coaching me or allowing me to ask questions or to explore or anything like that. It was very much based in anxiety and fear and shame. And then as I got older, those sort of quieted until college. And I would say I got almost like the OCD that I think maybe a lot of people would relate to, sort of the lower level symptoms of OCD. I know that I have OCD. I still had OCD even when it kind of quieted. But I think what happened during my, late high school years and college years is that my OCD compulsion got to be very helpful in our world. So it was very much about being diligent and studying and keeping everything in order and, having a very clear agenda, and all of that just right OCD actually allowed me to excel. And so I got a ton of external validation at this point. And oftentimes, external validation is exactly what someone with OCD is dying for. It is the external person saying, like, you're okay, you're normal. Even if I can't express all of these awful feelings I have on the inside or the way I feel, that external validation soothed me. And so I just kept going and going. And of course, this is sort of the trajectory of, a high functioning type A person who has this external drive to succeed rather than an internal drive to succeed. And that led me all the way into AA school. I moved from Ohio to Missouri to teach anesthesia through an AA program out here in Kansas City, as well as work in this area. I loved it. And then my biggest, I guess, theme of OCD crept in when I was really getting serious with the man who now became my husband. There is a type of OCD called relationship OCD, ROCD. And this is the type of OCD that I had from the time I met my husband, which was like 2005, through really being treated, which was in 2021. So how many years is that? That's 16 years. Yes. 16 years of very, very loud relationship OCD. Relationship OCD is when you're constantly worrying whether the relationship you're in is the right one. You can see a little bit of a pattern in OCD thinking, but it focuses like on a different aspect of your life, something that's important to you, which is something that once I learned that, I was like, that's one of the reasons why it hurts so bad, is it just takes the things that are most important to you. Safety, early on with my family unit, acceptance was a lot of the like puberty phase. And now the love that I had with my husband was just always being tested by my OCD brain, my relationship OCD symptoms, asking like, is he the right one? Well, that just happened. Oh, you weren't attracted to him, that's 5-second period. What does that mean? Maybe he's not the right one. And just, I can't tell you how much peace it stole from me for 16 years. And my husband and my husband's just the perfect person for me. He was able, without knowing that that's what was going on, he was able to see that there was something going on kind of in addition to the love that I was able to show him. And I would say things like, I know I love you, but I can't stop worrying that you're not the one for me. Like I could almost verbalize it and I would kind of get around it, but I never, number one, knew about OCD. Really, I never knew that there were these flavors of OCD, that there was just one called relationship OCD that I perfectly fit into. I had like immense love for him, but also so much doubt right along with it. I was always looking for reassurance from my friends or my family, or like, hey, is this person right? What do you think? I just could never settle into the love I felt being enough. It was always like this thing was being pulled away from me, and I was grasping at it, trying to prove that, like, oh no, you're supposed to be here with me, truly physically and emotionally and mentally. So then, it was like, the rest of my life had been where I was able to coexist with the pain and the discomfort and the uncertainty. I just basically lived with it. I didn't know another way. I had felt this way since I was 8, 9, 10, and I was too scared to say anything out loud. I also wouldn't know exactly what to say. I had none of this language. I think maybe it sounds like I know a lot about OCD, and why wasn't I seeing these patterns? Or I remember actually seeing an MTV. I don't know. I was born in 84. I don't know if anyone remembers those like reality shows on MTV where they would show you like the true life behind. And I just remember one was like teenagers, 13-year-olds with OCD, and they were doing just the very typical one that I feel like everyone thinks about with OCD, which is like the counting and the light switching and um the like blinking. I actually had that one for a while, that symptom. But it was like interesting to me. I was like, huh, that feels like, oh, I'm very interested in this. Like, I felt resonance, but it was nothing more than that. There was no light bulb. There was no, I just think I was so in shame over everything that I just couldn't see that this wasn't me, that this wasn't my truest essence. And as I say that now, I realize that's exactly what it was. I was so scared by the fact that this was truly who I was, that I was going to be this way forever, that it made me hold it all in as opposed to reaching out for help. Until I had a huge, really mental health crisis. Again, I had finished the trauma therapy, and it felt like after a period of peace inside, my OCD symptoms just came on worse than ever. And of course, we all remember that 2020 was also the year of the pandemic. I had recently switched from working full time as a CAA to a part time CAA. This was a huge, amazing transition in my life, but again, a huge transition. And remember, OCD is an anxiety disorder. And so it was all just kicked up and mounted on each other. And I was still struggling with the relationship OCD. We had 3 kids at this point, 3 little kids. Our youngest, when this all was happening, just turned 2. And I had a 4-year-old and a 5 or 6-year-old. And it all just came crashing down around me. I became so overwhelmed. I couldn't think about anything else. I was so consumed by the worry that my husband wasn't meant to be. He wasn't the right one. It was also like, I just can't live this way anymore. I can't feel this forever. And it felt like our relationship was the thing that was making me feel so horrible inside, like the worry, the uncertainty, the never knowing, never feeling settled, never feeling at peace about it. I one night after, I tell my husband really everything. He knew as much as I knew at this point, and I sat him down and I actually was like, I don't think I can be with you anymore. I told him that I didn't want to give up on us. I was willing to do anything, go to therapy. I had just, kind of had my eyes open to how therapy can help and heal through the trauma, EMDR therapy. But I said, I don't know that it's going to work. There's nothing, nothing has changed. I've been dealing with this since we met. It's been almost 2 decades. I just can't live this way any longer. And it was so horrible to say out loud. And also, it felt like the only thing that was going to make me feel better, like the only thing that was going to allow me to escape the torment, the absolute torment I felt when I like when my mind got stuck on these loops of whether this relationship was meant to be. And I could go round and round telling you about how unsettling and awful it felt, but it's hard to describe, I guess, if you've never been there, because I mean, it's just maddening. It makes you not want to be in your own body, in your own head. It is so overwhelmingly awful. And so I cracked. I was like, I can't do this anymore. He was extremely supportive and was like, okay, let's, take this day by day. I ended up that evening having a call with our reverend, actually. And I was notably distressed on this call with her. It was a Zoom call. Again, this was like 2020. And she asked me what was going on. And I somehow was able to tell her in enough detail something like, I told Kevin, who's my husband, that I want a divorce, that I can't do this anymore. I don't feel like he's right for me. And she asked me a couple other questions. And I remember telling her, I can tell I'm happy. I can tell I love him. But there's a part of me that doesn't believe that's enough or won't let that be enough. And it just absolutely haunts me, is the wording I used for her. And she was very kind and listening. And she said, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I don't want to diagnose you, but what you're describing sounds like OCD. She had some personal experience with OCD, and she was like, I think that you should look into your symptoms online, or just take that with a grain of salt. What do you think? And I talked to her a little bit more about it. And then I got off the call with her. I Googled my symptoms. I think I said something like, I am married. I can tell I'm happy and I love my husband, but I can't release the feeling that something's not right, that he's not the one for me. There's something wrong and I can't find what's wrong. And immediately it came up with OCD and ROCD, relationship OCD. And I read just the first sentence or two of like the Google AI, like top hit, and it was me. I just couldn't believe how perfectly this algorithm had told me what I've been struggling with, for the past 16 years. And then as I continued reading on, I very quickly saw that there were these types of OCD and the way it manifests, and just I could pinpoint the ones that I had struggled with over the course of my life and growing up. And I didn't feel better. Like the anxiety, the awfulness, the shame, the worry, the heaviness, the pressure, that didn't go away, but my brain went, this is it. This is what I have. This is why I can't be at peace. This is why I'm haunted. And it just, when you're searching for a reason, so much of OCD is searching for a reason for whatever, finding something, finding just the right thing, finding the perfect way to walk or the right times you need to blink. And so this diagnosis, or like seeing this on Google, like fed this deep, deep, deep need in me to figure out what was wrong with me. And from there, I went immediately to find the OCD therapist, the specialist therapist that my reverend had recommended. I saw that she had a 3-month wait list, and I'm a CAA. So you give me something that, I need, or it's going to help me, or I need to learn. And I was like down that rabbit hole so quick. I ended up going to BetterHelp, which I had been hearing a lot about, online and in the podcast I was listening to. And just, I feel like BetterHelp had its heyday during the pandemic, which is an online therapy community, or find a therapist online and attend therapy online. So I went on there, went to BetterHelp, made a profile, found a specialist who does OCD work. I did not know about the type of therapy that is meant for OCD, which is called ERP, Exposure Response Prevention. And I set up my first appointment like a week later. I ended up being recommended by that therapist to go to see my primary care doctor. Long story short, my primary care doctor recommended an SSRI. So I was recommended Prozac. And I remember being prescribed 10 milligrams of Prozac. And I went back after, I think, like 10 days or something of being on it. And you know, go to see how the dose is affecting you. And my primary care was like, how are you feeling? And I remember telling her, I felt like I had just a boulder sitting on my chest, like, since I can remember. And starting the Prozac made me aware, like exquisitely aware of that boulder. And then by the time 10 days on Prozac had gone past, I remember telling her that I feel like that boulder is still there, but it's broken up into like thousands of little pieces. So there's like teeny little pockets where I feel, I don't even know that I felt relief. I could just feel the pressure releasing. And so then she upped my dose to 20 milligrams, and that's what I've been on since. And slowly, probably over the course of 2 months, in addition to the online therapy that I was doing. And then, of course, after 3 months, I went in person to an OCD specialist, a therapist who does ERP therapy, exposure response prevention therapy, which is the gold standard of treatment for OCD, but not the only thing that works. And I started to understand myself, was probably the biggest thing that first happened. And once the Prozac started working and the therapy, I could see that it was working. I just was able to see that I don't have to live like this every day. I don't have to continue on this way. I felt hope. I felt like I could find peace finally. And it took probably about a year for me to really feel not symptom free, but very well controlled. So much of it was an educational process. I learned so much about OCD and what it can look like and act like, and who has it and why you have it and all those sorts of things, which really helped understanding it more and understanding me more. And so basically since then, I have just been on this journey of trying to, I guess, figure out who I am without the OCD, without the good parts of OCD. And I don't know if that's whatever controversial or whatever, but I know that our culture held up what I was able to do when I was almost manic from the OCD, in terms of perfectionism and pushing forward and getting everything done and being reliable. Like I am one of the most reliable people I know. And it's because of this like ingrained stress maybe, or this ingrained anxiety to like, I have to finish this task for it to feel complete and good. And so I've just been figuring out like, who am I in addition to the parts of me that were shaped because of OCD? And some parts I'm okay with, you know, kind of keeping a little bit, but just understanding. I like that I'm highly organized and can do a lot and can kind of juggle many things. But I am so much more tender with myself on what I need, how to rest. I mean, it's just been a really, really amazing and powerful healing journey. And so, yeah, I totally didn't look at any of the questions. Adri, thank you for making all these questions, but I just started talking. Adri posed this question: what do you think you would have done differently had you been diagnosed earlier? And I do sometimes think about this. I actually just read a story by Dr. Cassie Ferguson, who is a pediatric ER physician who I just had on the podcast talking about neuroplasticity. And she wrote and told a story. If you are familiar with the Moth Storytelling Hour, it's just a sort of an open mic night storytelling community. And she told a story. And at the end of the story, she talked about like, if this wouldn't have happened to me, where would I be? I wouldn't be standing in front of a room full of medical students, which is where the storytelling hour was. I wouldn't be here as a physician, or would I? I'm not sure. And I really sat back and thought about that for my own life too. Like, if I hadn't had OCD, would I have been as driven? Would I have been able to accomplish everything I've been able to accomplish? How much of that is me and how much of that is OCD? And I think what I want to say is that I know there are parts of me that OCD has shaped that I want to completely let go of. I know there are parts of me that OCD has shaped that I'm okay holding on to some of. And I know there's a lot of me that OCD didn't touch that I can tap back into. And so this part of my life, I'm very interested in seeing when I tap back to almost those untouched parts, those parts that went hidden away really early on because they didn't feel safe or they weren't venerated by my family or they weren't held as important. I want to tap back into those and just see where they go. I think I'm a creative person. I think I'm a storyteller and I want to be a storyteller. And I think there's something there for me that OCD didn't touch. And so it's just really interesting as a CAA know that I'm happy and I feel really good giving anesthesia. And I'm happy and I feel really good doing this podcast. And I'm happy and I feel really good when I'm teaching our AA community, and that all of those things can coexist. And so much of OCD tells me like it has to be this one way. There's these very like linear paths and there's got to stay within these, limits. And having more freedom from OCD tells me like there's so much gray and I'm okay with the gray now in a way that I was never okay with. And it's really exciting. It's actually really exciting to see where this is all going to go and take me. I feel like I have so many years of peace and freedom ahead of me. And also, if I only get today, that was pretty good too. Because living the way I had been living for decades was torture. It was torture. And because I had that very dark time, I feel like my days now, I can really appreciate how good they feel and how many amazing, joyful moments happen to me every day. And yeah, I'm just excited to continue and to keep going. I'm going to probably put some stuff in the show notes about OCD awareness, probably some links that Adri's going to help me find that will be useful for you. And if you've listened all the way to the end here, I'm so grateful. We were probably meant to have this conversation. I'm excited to put this out into the world. I probably am going to put it out really shortly. I just recorded this and I'm actually hoping to maybe put it out tomorrow and then go on a meditation retreat and just kind of disconnect from it and let it settle, kind of let the vulnerability hangover happen in peace and quiet on my own before I check Instagram or anything. But I hope it reaches who it's supposed to. And even if this wasn't a perfect story, I feel proud of myself for sharing. And I just encourage you to share your stories as well. It doesn't have to be on a podcast with a big community. It could be just even with yourself, like talking yourself through something that's hurt you or a worry you have is really helpful. And reaching out for help is the next best step. My life was totally changed when I just mentioned how horrible I was feeling to my reverend, to someone close to me. And she mentioned this thing that completely changed my life for the better. And it's as easy as that. And it's also as hard as that. I don't want to minimize that took me years and years to be able to do. But I'm so glad that I was strong enough to be vulnerable and to share my story. So, all right, everyone, I will see you next week after my meditation retreat. I'm planning on recording another Wellness Wednesday about this right here, my year-end like journal and inventory that I do. I wanted to share just kind of where I've been in 2025, what sparked joy for me, what I want more of, maybe what I want to let go. And so that's what I have planned for our next Wellness Wednesday. You can DM me your questions or comments through the link in the show notes, wherever you're listening to this or watching this on YouTube. If you want me to email you back, you have to put your email in that text. It doesn't show me who those are from. And just share this episode with someone you love. You never know who these things are going to help or touch. So, all right. Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening to Awakened Anesthetist. If this episode resonated with you, share it with a CAA friend, an AA student in your life, or a perspective, and let them know why you loved it. It's the most important thing you can do to support this podcast and its mission. You can always find more ways to connect with me and this CAA community at awakenedanesthetist.com, including an invitation to join Season 5 Mindful Connections. These are free virtual gatherings open to anyone in our Awakened Anesthetist community. And while you're scrolling the website, check out my trusted CAA partners who make this podcast possible, with a special thank you to my Season 5 sponsor, Harmony Anesthesia Staffing. Talk soon.